Chapter 471 Redemption Meeting. When Chin and the accountant Mr. Wei reported and summarized the accounting situation in the factory to the village committee led by Yu Bing and Wu Jin. The settlement time for the other three people's projects was the last day of December. After the results came out, it was the most important moment for the entire village. It was the year-end dividend meeting. The meeting location was in the rice field in front of the village committee. All the men, women, old, and young in the village were present. When Wu Jin took over, He Mountain Village was still a poor village. However, at the end-of-year summary meeting of the county government last December, He Mountain Village lost the poverty that had existed for more than 10 years. As Wu Jin looked at the thriving village, he felt a little emotional. He revealed a rare smile and said loudly through the loudspeaker, "Good afternoon, everyone. It's time for the year-end dividends again. I'll share the good news with everyone first. The changes in our village in the past year have been huge. The commune supervisor and the county supervisor saw it all. At the conference at the end of last month, they praised He Mountain Village. Not only are we no longer labeled as a poor village, but the county director also praised us in front of the entire county supervisors. He gave us the 1976 Advanced Model Village pennant as a commendation. He also encouraged us to continue developing and expand the ecological industry chain." With that, Wu Jin turned around and took out a pennant from a bag. After he received the news last month, he was in no hurry to announce this good news at the radio station. He wanted to show it in public today. Seeing it personally could make people feel more honored. Wu Jin hoped to use this method to motivate the entire village to continue this year's work enthusiasm. As soon as the silk banner was taken out, the villagers below the stage became excited. "Mr. Wu, how many villages in the county have this? Are we the only ones who have it? This is the first time our village has been so glorious in so many years." Some old people in their 60s or 70s had never heard of their village obtaining such an honor since the founding of the country, so they grinned happily. When Wu Jin heard this, he replied with a smile, "There are only 3 villages in the entire county." As soon as he said this, everyone became excited again. Although their village wasn't the only one which was commended, there were more than 100 villages in Pingjiang County, so it was already impressive for their village to enter the top 3. The lively atmosphere below the stage made Wu Jin's smile deepen. Then, he raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. "There's someone who contributed greatly to our advancement. Next, please let our overall person in charge of the ecological industry chain, Yu Bing, say a few words to everyone." Yu Bing was in the first row of the audience watching the commotion, but she didn't expect to be suddenly called on stage. She thought that she would just get a dividend like last year. Yu Bing wasn't prepared, so she hurriedly waved at Wu Jin with a resistant expression. "Mr. Wu, just say it yourself. I didn't prepare anything to say." Wu Jin was usually serious and always had a straight face, so those who were not familiar with him were a little afraid of him. However, Wu Jin acted a little mischievous today. "Miss Yu says that she's not prepared to speak on stage. Everyone, tell me. Do you guys still want to hear her speech?" Someone immediately shouted in support, "I want to listen to her speech." Everyone also asked Yu Bing to go on stage to say a few words. At this point, it would be inappropriate to refuse, so Yu Bing couldn't refuse anymore. She smiled and stood up to walk onto the stage. As Yu Bing looked at the smiling faces below the stage, she smiled and said, "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yu Bing. I suddenly came up and don't know what to say. In that case, I'll just say whatever comes to mind. I'm very happy that this project was able to reach this scale and was even approved by the county supervisor. However, what I want to say is that I was the one who suggested this project, but its success in the end is inseparable from the efforts and support of the entire village. Some people might give credit to the workers in the factory, as well as the workers in the orchards, farms, and fish ponds. They're the ones in the front line, so of course they contributed a lot. But the villagers who didn't participate directly also contributed. The farm work in the field, the maintenance and repair of the village's infrastructure, all needed people to do it. This project mobilized more than 100 people in the village, which means that all the work in this area was distributed equally. Therefore, you guys are the contributors behind the scenes. Our project is like a ship. I know the direction, but you guys are rowers. Everyone is very important. Only by working together can we drive the ship to our destination faster and better. I hope we can maintain this high fighting spirit during the new year. Thank you, everyone. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 472 A small group of people. The audience applauded and everyone was discussing it enthusiastically. "Miss Yu, you're still as low-key as ever. Why was Sun Wang so short-sighted previously? He was giving orders all day long, but he almost sank the boat." The surrounding people laughed when they heard this. "That's right. Not everyone can determine the right direction. Previously, I thought that the production value we created in the field was inferior to the employees involved in the project. After hearing this, I feel more confident. We're behind-the-scenes contributors, the kind who contribute silently. Educated people are indeed quite eloquent. Her words make people feel so comfortable. That's just empty talk. I think she's trying to coax us villagers who didn't get chosen as workers to work in the fields obediently. Hey, Mr. Nyo, you make it sound like you didn't have to work before this project began. The man called Mr. Nyo immediately retorted, yes, but there were many people, so we didn't have to be as tired as we are now. Mr. Nyo attended the interview every round of recruitment, but he was always stuck at the first round. He had always been a little indignant and angry that Yubing refused to lower her standards, causing more than 10 worker spots in the factory to be occupied by outsiders. There were many people in the village who could tell right from wrong, so someone immediately interrupted and rebuked him. There weren't so many dividends in the past. When there were fewer dividends, there were fewer complaints. Now, there are more dividends than in the past, but you're using work as an excuse. That's right. Stop pretending to be the victim. Not to mention the year-end dividends. Which family hasn't earned money from the bamboo gift boxes, eggs, chili, and other raw materials that the factory usually collects? In the past, we had to take them to the commune ourselves. Now, we can earn money at our doorstep, yet you're still complaining? A small group of people like Mr. Nyo, who wanted to cause trouble, was quickly condemned by the others. Although the villagers didn't know how much more dividends there would be this year, this project gave everyone hope. They wanted to protect it and refused to allow these troublemakers to stir up trouble. After Yubing finished speaking, Wu Jing went on stage and told them about the profits of the factory. Because most of the profits were used to repay the debt, there was only profit for the 2 to 3 months at the end of the year. He set aside the operating capital and distributed the rest in dividends, so there wasn't much left. Then, the village staff began to organize everyone to line up and go forward. After confirming their work points with Mr. Wei and Wen Qin, the cashier was in charge of distributing the money. Zhao Lin, Director Liu, and a few team leaders were in charge of distributing the food. People like Yu Yan, who slacked off all day long and took leave very often, didn't get much money. After the 50 yuan she borrowed from the village was deducted, she only got 12.82 yuan. Because she had gone home, the money and food were temporarily placed in the office of the village committee. She would collect them after the new year. As Yan Yin looked at the 128.5 yuan in his hand, he felt a little upset. He had previously asked around. According to previous years, he could only get 80 to 90 yuan. The reason why he could get so much more now was that the village's collective project had succeeded. When Yan Yin thought of Yubing, who had been talking so confidently on the stage just now, he suddenly felt that she was very dazzling. Her thin figure, which he used to think was unattractive, seemed so charming. Her cheeks were fair and rosy, revealing her healthiness. She exuded a completely different aura from before. However, if one asked Yan Yin if he had any regrets, he would definitely deny it. After all, the temptation of returning to the city was greater to Yan Yin than anything else. He only felt that as his former marriage partner, Yubing had once belonged to him, so how could her life get better after being abandoned by him? However, no one cared about the complicated emotions in Yan Yin's heart. He was just secretly complaining to himself. He was someone who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Yu Yan's outcome after scheming against Yubing was still vivid in his mind, so he wouldn't provoke Yubing now. After the end-of-year dividends were distributed, everyone had to start preparing for the new year. Because it was cold outside, Yubing and Jiang Chun had been reading at home every day recently. Their days were leisurely and carefree. Cui Jin rushed to the He Mountain village on the morning of the 27th of the lunar year. After Jiang Chun took the marriage report from Cui Jin's army, she looked for Wu Jin to write a permission slip. This kind of marriage was naturally in line with the conditions to write a permission slip. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 473 Rare Impulse. After Jiang Chun finished the procedures, she went home and began to pack her luggage while nagging Yubing to be careful at home. As Yubing listened to her, she replied with a smile, "Don't worry. Little Tiger is accompanying me, so you and Cui Jin can just enjoy your wedding." The two of them chatted for a while before parting reluctantly. Jiang Chun and Cui Jin wanted to go home early. Because they had to transfer routes a few times, which would be pretty troublesome, they bought bus stamps to the provincial capital that day and transferred trains there. After she was suddenly the only one left in the house, Yubing felt that the small house actually seemed quite empty. Yubing read books and played with the dog during the day. At night, amidst her boredom, she brought her recent correspondence with Xiaoxing to bed to read again. Things were not going well in terms of the surgery. The person who donated the cornea decided to set the surgery on the second day of the new year, so their schedule had to be delayed. Other than the surgery, the two of them talked about their daily lives and in the letters as well. When Yubing saw that Xiaoxing said that he missed her in the recent letter, a scene suddenly appeared in her mind. Xiaoxing gazed at her with his gentle eyes as he told her that he missed her, and she even seemed to hear his voice. Yubing's face instantly turned red. Then, she pulled the blanket over to cover her face and she couldn't help but giggle. At this moment, Yubing suddenly had a bold idea. The next morning, Yubing jogged to Wu Jin's office. Yubing panted. "Uncle Jin, I want to get a permission slip to go to S-City." When Wu Jin saw Yubing's anxious expression, he asked in confusion, "Isn't your family in Hang City? Why are you going to S-City?" Before Yubing could answer, Wu Jin suddenly realized something and revealed a teasing expression. "Are you worried about Xiaoxing?" Yubing's ears turned red, but she braced herself and said, "I'm just worried about Xiaoli. It's not convenient for a man like him to take care of her." Wu Jin pursed his lips to hide his smile. He wanted to tease Yubing, but he was worried that his teasing would embarrass Yubing and make her unwilling to go later. If Xiaoxing found out that he had ruined his plans, wouldn't he cause trouble for him when he returned? Hence, he pretended to be serious as he said, "All right, I'm very touched that you want to inspect the market during the new year." There had to be a reason for the permission slip, so Wu Jin immediately found a reason that matched Yubing's identity. It was easy to get things done with acquaintances around. Yubing suppressed the embarrassment of being seen through by Wu Jin and took the permission slip. "Thank you, Uncle Jin." When Wu Jin thought of the problem of Yubing's transportation to the county city, he mentioned his son. "Get Wu Jin to send you to the county city later." Yubing wanted to get there quickly, so she accepted Wu Jin's good intentions. She went home to get some food, then carried little Tiger to Wenqing's house and asked her to take care of it for a while. Wenqing had received a lot of favors from Yubing, so he was very happy to be able to help now, and he told Yubing not to worry. After settling little Tiger down, Wu Qing and Yubing started the trip to S-City with luggages of various sizes. Many people returned home during the new year, so it wasn't easy to buy train stamps. When Yubing arrived at City H's train station, the stamps to City S were already gone. Yubing was rarely so impulsive, and she didn't expect to be in such a sorry state after being impulsive for once in so long. She could only deposit the package at the train station service station first and go to the stamp refund office to see if anyone returned S-City bus stamps. After waiting for an entire day, Yubing finally saw someone return an S-City bus stamp just when she thought she had to spend the new year in the waiting room. Yubing was so excited that she almost stuck her head into the other side of the counter. After she took the stamp she had finally bought, she took out the package and waited in the waiting room to get on the bus. Yubing was quite lucky. The time of the stamp that was returned was early in the morning on the 30th. This meant that when Yubing arrived in S-City, she could still make it in time for the last day of the new year. Xiaoli had to be hospitalized for a checkup 3 days before the surgery, so Xiaoli could only spend the new year in the hospital. On the 30th, Xiaoxing and Xiaolin accompanied Xiaoli for New Year's Eve dinner and stayed in the hospital until 9 o'clock at night. Because the doctor asked Xiaoli to sleep early, the two brothers didn't stay long. They hired a female nurse to accompany Xiaoli to the bed, then they left. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 474, Heartache. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. The courtyard Xiaoxing rented was only 10 minutes away from the hospital. Because it was the new year, the streets were very lively. However, Xiaoxing and Xiaolin were not interested. As long as the surgery wasn't done yet, they would feel uneasy. The two of them walked home under the dim yellow street lamp in the alley. When they arrived at the door, they saw a petite figure standing beside the courtyard door. Her head was wrapped tightly in a scarf and she looked very sleepy. There were 2 bags on the ground and the rope holding the bags was held by the owner. Xiaolin was wondering why someone would come looking for them when they were only tenants. He thought that the other party had come to the wrong door. However, Xiaoxing recognized the person standing at a glance and hurriedly ran forward. When he saw Yubing with her eyes closed and head lowered, his heart ached. Xiaoxing shook Yubing's shoulder gently and shouted softly, "Yubing, you." Bing. Yubing woke up and slowly opened her eyes. There was a hint of sleepiness in her soft voice and she sounded like she was wheedling as she said, "You're back." When Xiaolin heard his brother call for her, he realized that it was Yubing. He ran forward and opened the door as he asked happily, "Sister Yubing, why are you here?" Yubing was extremely sleepy now. Previously, she had waited for the stamp for an entire day, and after getting on the train, she didn't dare to fall asleep. However, when she heard Xiaolin's question, she tried her best to smile and joke, "Why? Am I not welcome?" Xiaolin hurriedly smiled and replied, "Of course you're welcome." Xiaoxing took the luggage from Yubing. When did you arrive? Did you wait for a long time? Yu Bing shook her head groggily. I didn't wait long. I arrived at 8:30. It was already past 9 o'clock, which meant that Yu Bing had been standing in the wind for more than half an hour. Xiaoxing brought Yu Bing into the house. Seeing that Yu Bing could barely even keep her eyes open, his heart ached. Yu Bing, sleep in Xiao Li's room. Her blanket is clean. At this moment, Yu Bing was so sleepy that she couldn't think straight, so she followed Xiaoxing mindlessly. Hearing Xiao Li's name, she opened her eyes and looked at the two brothers in front of her. Only then did she realize that someone was missing. Where's Xiao? Xiaoxing held Yu Bing's hand as he entered Xiao Li's room and he explained, the doctor said that she has to be hospitalized before the surgery, so I asked a nurse to take care of her. Hurry up and get some rest now. Yu Bing was relieved when she heard this. Coupled with the fact that she had already reached a safe environment, she closed her eyes as she followed Xiaoxing. Xiaoxing stopped in front of the bed. Seeing that Yu Bing was about to rush forward with her eyes closed, he hurriedly stopped her and pressed her against the bed. Xiaoxing shook his head helplessly. Then, he untied the scarf Yu Bing was wrapped in and took off her hair tie. Then, he began to help Yu Bing take off her clothes, shoes, and pants until only her autumn clothes were left. Xiaoxing didn't have any lustful thoughts at this moment. He only wanted Yu Bing to rest. Yu Bing cooperated the entire time. The fabric of the blanket was so cold that Yu Bing shivered, but because she was too sleepy, she fell asleep nonetheless. Xiaoxing was amused by Yu Bing's lack of vigilance. After reaching out to cover her with the blanket, he carefully tucked in the corners of the blanket and turned on the stove in the room. S-City was humid, in contrast to the dry and cold temperature in Jiang Province. The cold here was bone deep. In addition, there was no adobe bed, so one had to burn a stove when sleeping. Otherwise, one might catch a cold. After the room slowly warmed up, Xiaoxing sat by Yu Bing's bed. Then, he reached out his index finger and scratched the tip of Yu Bing's nose gently as he said softly, "Little thing, did you come to give me a surprise?" Yu Bing, who was already asleep, naturally couldn't reply to him. Xiaoxing's heart softened and he leaned over to kiss Yu Bing's forehead before getting up to leave. When Yu Bing woke up, the sunlight was already very bright outside. She opened her eyes groggily and was still in a daze when she suddenly saw an unfamiliar environment. After a few seconds, she came back to her senses and yawned. When she saw the neatly folded clothes and pants beside the pillow, she picked them up and put them on. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 475, New Year. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. When Yu Bing opened the door, she saw the two of them squatting on the ground and stewing veggies with the stove. The two people in the living room turned around when they heard the commotion. Xiaolin immediately smiled and greeted Yu Bing. Happy New Year, Sister Yu Bing. Happy New Year. Yu Bing chuckled as she took out a red packet from her pocket. Happy New Year, you're quite quick-witted. Xiaolin hurriedly put away the red packet and replied cleverly, in terms of New Year blessings, of course the earlier the better. Xiaoxing stood up with a gentle look in his eyes as he said to Yu Bing, Happy New Year. Yu Bing thought of how she had been stripped down to her long johns last night, so she blushed slightly as she replied softly, Happy New Year. Xiaoxing patted the top of Yu Bing's head and said gently, Lunch is ready. Sit at the side for a while. Yu Bing looked at the eggplants and salted fish stew in the pot in relief. This was what she had taught him how to make and it wasn't difficult, so Xiaoxing should be able to settle it. Xiaolin, who was watching at the side, felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, but he didn't know what exactly was wrong. Before he could think of an answer, the aroma of the food attracted his attention. Xiaoxing and Yu Bing had an unspoken mutual understanding as to why Yu Bing rushed to S-City at this time. In fact, this was also the characteristic of courtship in this era. It wasn't as straightforward as in the future. Instead, people's interactions were more reserved. There was no intense passion, only subtle affection. The two of them had been at each other's throats for so long, but Xiaoxing had only confessed his feelings twice. The first time was when he confessed that he liked her, and the second time was when he said that he missed Yu Bing during their last correspondence. Yu Bing's response was, If you say so, here I come. Before dinner started, Yu Bing took the initiative to ask about Xiao Li's latest situation and Xiaoxing explained in detail. Yu Bing calculated the time. Today was the first day of the new year, which meant that tomorrow was the day of the surgery. The three of them went to the hospital together after dinner. Xiao Li didn't know that Yu Bing had arrived in S-City last night. When she heard the familiar footsteps, she hesitated for a moment and couldn't believe it, so she asked tentatively, "Sister Yubing?" After Yubing entered the ward, she didn't speak, but she didn't expect her footsteps to be recognized immediately. She went forward to rub Xiaoli's face with a smile as she marveled, "Your ears are too impressive. You came to the big city and heard so many sounds, but you still recognized my footsteps so quickly." When Xiaoli heard Yubing speak, her eyes lit up in excitement. Then, she smiled and said, "Sister Yubing, are you here to accompany me during the surgery?" After Xiaoxing opened the lunchbox, he looked at Xiaoli, who was talking to Yubing happily, and interrupted the two of them with a smile. "Xiaoli, hurry up and eat. Sister Yubing won't leave." The female nurse went forward to take the lunchbox and feed Xiaoli, but Xiaoxing hurriedly stopped her. "Auntie, Xiaoli can eat by herself. You don't have to worry about her." The female nurse was in her 40s. When she heard this, she retracted her hand. As an outsider, it was inconvenient for her to say anything while the family was chatting. The female nurse looked at Xiaoxing and the others as she said tactfully, "Then you guys can chat inside. I'll sit outside. Call me if there's anything." Because it was the new year, the others in the ward chose to go home for the new year. The ward had 6 beds, but other than Xiaoli, there was only a little boy opposite her. His mother and grandma were accompanying him. After Yubing took a look, she retracted her gaze. Xiaoli had not seen Yubing for a month and missed her very much, so the two of them kept talking. Xiaoli suddenly stopped talking. Then, she said to Yubing softly, "Sister Yubing, cover your ears." Although Xiaoli had reminded her, Yubing felt a little baffled. Before she could react, Xiaoxing covered Yubing's ears with his palm. The ward door was suddenly pushed open forcefully and the white wooden door hit the wall with a bang. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 476, Removal of the Conjunctiva. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. The little boy's mother stood up and took a few steps forward. Then, she asked the man who walked into the ward, "What did Dr. Min say?" The man replied angrily, "What can he possibly say? He's just shirking responsibility." When the little boy's grandma heard this, she immediately shouted, "I knew we shouldn't have signed that preoperative notice. I told you guys not to sign it, but you insisted. Now, they've shirked the blame and we can't even hold them accountable. This is the hospital's way of scamming us commoners." When Yubing heard the argument, she turned to look at them curiously. The boy was lying on the bed with a comic book in his hand and was engrossed in it. There were still 7 to 8 small books on the bedside table and stacked against the wall. Perhaps because the boy's eyes were itching, but he reached out and rubbed them twice. When the boy's mother saw this, she quickly grabbed her son's hand. After the little boy was stopped, he tried to shake off his mother's hand impatiently and shouted, "What are you doing? My eyes are itching." When the old lady saw that her grandson was unhappy, she raised her finger and accused the woman, "Chen-Shi, would it kill you not to provoke him? He's already uncomfortable, so why do you have to go against him?" Chen-Shi looked at her mother-in-law helplessly. "Mom, the doctor said that he can't rub his eyes, or they'll get infected." The old lady only cared about the fact that her grandson was unhappy. "Those bullsh** tea doctors were lying to you. His surgery failed, so he wants to use other excuses to cover up his mistake." With that, the old lady said to her son, "Oh wait, let me tell you, we can't let this matter rest just like that. My grandson was stabbed in the eye and we've paid the surgery fees. Now, they're saying that our poor care caused the postoperative infection. We won't admit to this. They should make up for their mistake. Our request is very simple. They have to give us imported medicine for free for the subsequent treatment and refund the surgery fees." Oh Wei was tall and muscular. When he heard his mother's words, he expressed agreement. "I valrie askia aruna. Teniers mia an importia anti-inflammatory drug. With a few injections, the infection will immediately improve by more than half. It's just a little expensive. A few injections will cost 1 to 2,000 yuan. Mom, don't worry. If he doesn't give us an explanation, we won't let him off. He has to satisfy our requirements." After Yubing retracted her gaze and took Xiaoxing's hand, she realized that everyone seemed to be used to it already and looked very calm. Xiaolin went forward and whispered to Yubing, "That little boy's name is Oli. He's 6 years old this year and he did a conjunctiva removal surgery. 2 days ago, the doctor discovered that there was an infection after the surgery. When his family found out, they felt that it was caused by the surgery, so they've been looking for Dr. Min for the past 2 days. Yubing widened her eyes in shock. His conjunctiva had been removed? Then what was the other party looking at with the comic book just now? When Xiaoxing heard Xiaolin's blunder, he looked up and rubbed his forehead helplessly. That's called conjunctiva cyst removal. Yu Bing was speechless. Xiaolin laughed awkwardly. It's pretty much the same. Xiaoxing tapped Xiaolin's head hard. It's very different. I told you to study hard instead of focusing on those messy things. You didn't even get the facts straight. Xiaolin smiled at Xiaoxing ingratiatingly and didn't dare to retort. He was afraid that he would anger Xiaoxing and be forced to return to the rented house to study. Brother, I'll definitely focus on learning. Although Xiaolin was here to accompany Xiaoli for the surgery this time, Xiaoxing brought all the books over, so he didn't stop studying. It was only during the new year that Xiaolin obtained a few days of break from studying. Yu Bing reached out and rubbed Xiaolin's head. She was a little envious that he and Xiaoli had such a brother. Their family wasn't well off, but because Xiaoxing was protecting them, Xiaoli and Xiaolin were actually very well protected. Perhaps it was because boys matured later, but Xiaolin still didn't know how to cherish the opportunity to study. Although his grades had indeed improved after a few months of hard work, it was more because other people told him to do this than because he himself realized that he should do it. Xiaolin had his shortcomings and strengths, such as being unafraid of hardship, respecting his brother, and being protective of his younger sister. At this moment, he was giving Xiaoli an eye massage. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 477, Medical Trouble. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Half an hour later, 2 medical staff came to do ward rounds. When Xiaoxing saw them, he immediately stood up from the stool and greeted, Dr. Min, Miss Zhao, Happy New Year. Xiaoli and Xiaolin also greeted the adults politely. Dr. Min smiled and nodded in response. As he looked at Xiaolin, he praised, Xiaolin, you learned it very well. Your technique is quite professional. Xiaolin straightened his body and grinned. Thank you for your praise, Dr. Min. Amidst the harmonious atmosphere, a mean voice suddenly interrupted them. Who are you trying to harm now? When everyone turned their attention to the person who spoke, they realized that it was Li's grandma. Dr. Min frowned and turned to the old lady standing behind him. Madam O, I've already said that the surgery was very successful. This infection is caused by postoperative care. If you don't believe me, you can go to another hospital for a checkup. This way, you can verify if what I said is true. When the old lady heard this, her ears automatically filtered out. Don't give us that. You just want to appease us to make it easier for you to shirk responsibility. Then, the old lady reached out with her thin but strong hand and grabbed Dr. Min's wrist firmly before she pulled him towards Li's bed. Come here. Look at my grandson's red eyes. What did you say before? You said that this was a small surgery. Why didn't you do it well? Miss Zhao hurriedly followed. When she saw the child lying down while reading, she frowned. She snatched the book from the child's hand. Madam O, how many times have I told you? He can't read while lying down. Look at how red his eyes are. How long has he been reading for? I reminded you guys every day not to let him overuse his eyes. Oli was reading with relish when the book in his hand was suddenly taken away, so he lost his temper. Grandma! She snatched my book. The old lady hurriedly went forward to comfort her grandson before warning Miss Zhao fiercely, I'm warning you, return the book quickly. You snatch things from a child. To think that you're a nurse. How rude. Miss Zhao was a medical staff who had just graduated and had only been working for a few years. This was the first time she had seen such an unreasonable family who blamed her when she reminded them out of goodwill. She retorted angrily, I'm doing this for his own good. Madam O, are you insensible too? When the old lady saw that she had been criticized by a young lady in her 20s, she glared at her and threatened, Who do you think you're talking to? I'm in my 60s, yet you scolded me? Let me tell you, I'm going to the director's office to report you later. Young people were impetuous, and Dr. Min was worried that the already tense doctor-patient relationship would worsen, so he pushed Miss Zhao's shoulder and asked her to return to the nurse's station first. Miss Zhao pursed her lips helplessly and left first. Dr. Min pushed up the mirror frame of his glasses as he tried to persuade the old lady. Madam O, I'll give Oli a checkup first. The old lady glanced at Dr. Min and made way for him. After Dr. Min checked Oli and looked at the small book at the head of the bed, he frowned and said earnestly, Madam O, Oli has just finished surgery 2 weeks ago and he's in a recovery period now. His diet has to be light and he can't use his eyes excessively. This is the most basic requirement. At this moment, Chen Shi and Wei entered the ward with the kettle. When Wei heard Dr. Min's words, he snorted. My son can do whatever he wants. If there's a problem, it's your problem. Dad, why can't I see you clearly? Oli suddenly asked in a panicked voice. Wei hurriedly rushed to his son's bed. Son, what's wrong? Can you see me clearly now? Although he could see clearly now, Oli was still a little afraid. He cried as he said, I can see you clearly now, but not from afar. Daddy, am I going blind? Chinchi and Grandma were frightened by Oli's sudden change in condition and hugged Oli as they looked into his eyes. Wei turned around and grabbed Dr. Min's collar. What happened to my son's eyes? What did you do during the surgery? I'm going to cripple your hand? Dr. Min was 173 centimeters tall and Wei was 190 centimeters, so Wei used his advantage in height to lift Dr. Min up. Dr. Min could only tiptoe as he tried to remove his hand from his collar as he said anxiously, Don't be rash. Listen to me first. Xiaoxing's pupils dilated when he saw this scene. Not only was Dr. Min the most authoritative doctor in S-City's ophthalmology world, but he was also Xiao Li's chief surgeon tomorrow. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 478, Loss of Vision. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Xiaoxing quickly stepped forward without hesitation and grabbed Wei's wrist. After Wei let go in pain, his other free hand quickly clenched into a fist and attacked Xiaoxing. Although Xiaoxing was only 186 centimeters tall and didn't look as muscular as Wei, his strength was far stronger than that of ordinary people. He caught the other party's fist with his bare hand and clenched it tightly. Wei didn't expect this and shouted, Ouch. When Madame O saw that her son was being held by Xiaoxing, she wanted to knock Xiaoxing away with her body. Just as she took a step forward, Xiaoxing said in a cold voice, I'll fracture his hand if anyone dares to come over. If you don't believe me, give it a try. Xiaoxing's voice wasn't loud, but it was very cold. It was obvious that Xiaoxing would do what he said. Madame O immediately stopped. Xiaoxing looked at Wei aloofly as he asked calmly, Can we talk things out now? Wei nodded. Sure. After Xiaoxing let go, Wei quickly took 2 steps back and shook his hand. Dr. Min looked at Xiaoxing gratefully as he explained to Wei's family, the vision loss is temporary. It's possible for such a situation to happen during the recovery period, especially since you didn't take care of the patient according to our requirements. Wei snorted. Stop using that as an excuse. Tell me. When will my son recover? Dr. Min frowned and said seriously, You can't let Oli continue to read comics all day long, let alone rub his eyes. You have to take care of him according to our requirements. The normal recovery period is about a month. As long as you take good care of him, this situation will disappear. The O family was just an ordinary working-class family. They didn't have any culture, but they used brute force and pestering to achieve their goals quite often. Oli was the only child in the family. Not long after Oli was born, Wei got into a conflict with someone outside and injured his penis. He lost his ability to reproduce, so the entire family treated his only child as a treasure. At first, Oli's eyes only itched, so he went to the clinic to see the doctor, who said that it was conjunctivitis. The doctor prescribed Oli some anti-inflammatory ointment and medicine and reminded the O family to pay attention to his eye habits. After Oli went home, he applied medicine for 2 days and it healed, so the family didn't take it to heart. However, Oli's eye habits had not changed, and whenever he felt itchy, he could recover after dripping medicine. As time passed, the conjunctivitis kept flaring up again and again. When they realized that there were blisters in his eyes recently, the family immediately came to the best ophthalmology hospital in S-City. After Dr. Min's checkup, he arranged for surgery according to Oli's condition. Normally, he would be discharged in a week, but the O family was worried that he wouldn't recover well and insisted on staying until he recovered. Wei sized up Dr. Min and lowered his eyes for a moment. Then, he raised his hand and pointed at him as he said fiercely, This better be the case. If anything happens to my son's eyes, I'll cripple you. Dr. Min sighed as he looked at Chen Shi and Madame O, who were coaxing Oli. Then, he said, I know you love the child, but this is a big deal that will affect his sight for the rest of his life. You can't let the child do whatever he wants anymore. As long as he gets through this period of time, he can read comics normally. Previously, the cyst was gone after the surgery, so Madame O felt that this wasn't a big deal. Chen Shi would listen to the doctor's instructions, but Madame O and Wei indulged Oli. Now that Oli was in a critical situation, the two of them finally listened to the doctor. M/N Dr. Min saw that the O family was silent. He knew that they would change their ways this time. Then, he turned around and checked Xiaoli. Xiao Li's eyes were in good condition, so Dr. Min could tell that the Xiao family was really attentive. Doctors liked family members and patients who followed the doctor's orders the most. Dr. Min smiled as he said to Xiaoxing, "There's one last checkup left. Miss Zhao will bring you to the place for the checkup at 3:30. When Yu Bing thought of how the surgery was delayed for half a year, she asked worriedly, "Dr. Min, how are Xiao Li's eyes compared to half a year ago?" Dr. Min praised, "From the current examination, it's not much different from 6 months ago. This means that your daily care is very good. The last report will determine the difficulty of the surgery." Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 479, Not for Sale. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Xiaoxing asked a few more questions, and Dr. Min answered them patiently one by one. As soon as Dr. Min left, a couple entered the ward and walked straight to Xiao Li's bed. "Hello, is this Xiao Li's bed?" Xiaoxing paused and turned to look at the couple in front of him. The man was wearing a tunic suit, while the woman was wearing a linen suit and carrying a beautiful small leather bag. Both of them were wearing imported watches. Their leather shoes looked new and polished. The man looked at them with a hint of condescension. Xiaoxing stopped peeling the apple. After confirming that he didn't know the other party, he sat down when he saw the man's gaze. "May I ask who you are?" The woman smiled. "My name is Ning Bai. This is my husband, Jiang Hang. You're Xiao Li's brother, right? We have something to discuss with you." As Xiaoxing sized up the two of them, he felt that they didn't come with good intentions. However, he had to understand the other party's motive first before he could make his next move. "Tell me." Ning Bai took out 10,000 yuan from her bag and placed it on the bed. "My daughter is the next patient to undergo cornea surgery. I want to buy your sister's Q-spot with 10,000 yuan. Xiaoxing looked down at the 10,000 yuan on the bed. Xiaolin widened his eyes when he heard this. They had waited for so long before it was their turn. How could they buy the spot just like that? Who cared about this bit of money? Their family could afford it too. As Xiaoli leaned against the bedhead, she was stunned. Yu Bing frowned as she looked at the well-off couple in front of her. Xiaoxing retracted his gaze and continued to peel the apple as he said emotionlessly, "I'm not selling it." Jiang Hang and Ning Bai exchanged looks. They didn't expect to be rejected. Peasants might only earn 10,000 yuan in their entire lives. Jiang Hang gestured for his wife to continue. Ning Bai smiled. She didn't care about Xiaoxing's cold attitude and continued, "I heard that you guys came from the countryside. The surgery fee is at least 20,000 yuan. I reckon you guys have already borrowed from everyone you can. Why do you have to do this? You can only farm for the rest of your lives and make your family owe such a large debt. You might not be able to repay it for the rest of your lives." Xiaoxing pretended not to hear her and focused on peeling the apple skin. Jiang Hang and his wife were both government workers. His father worked in the army, so he was used to others flattering him. When he saw Xiaoxing ignore them, he felt a little angry and said coldly, "Kid, don't be too arrogant. First, figure out if your family background can compare to mine." When Xiaolin heard these threatening words, he looked at Xiaoxing worriedly. Xiaoxing's gaze was still on his hand as he smirked and said, "No matter what, I insist on my choice. Otherwise, how can I live up to the evaluation you gave me?" As soon as he finished speaking, the apple was completely peeled. Xiaoxing looked at it with a smile. Then, he threw it into the trash can at the side. "It looks quite nice. Unfortunately, it's just trash." After Xiaoxing placed the apple in Xiao Li's hand, he slowly wiped the juice on his finger with a handkerchief. His actions were so elegant that he didn't look like he came from the countryside. After Jiang Heng was first rendered speechless by Xiaoxing with his words, and was referred to as trash, his expression turned livid. Seeing this, Ning Bai knew that it was impossible to force Xiaoxing and continued to say with a smile, "When girls in the countryside grow up, they usually only have one path, which is to get married. You guys are from the countryside, so you're most likely to get married in the countryside. No matter how rich you are, your family can only save a few hundred yuan a year. This is already considered rich for you guys. So what if Xiaoli marries well? Her mother-in-law will be in charge of the family's money. How can she use her husband's family's money to pay off her debts? In the end, the debt will belong to the two of you. Or should I ask Xiaoli directly? Does she really have to be so selfish?" If Xiaoli's surgery fees had been saved up, even if she was persuaded to come to the hospital for treatment, when she heard this, she would definitely refuse to undergo surgery out of guilt. Unfortunately, Ningbai had miscalculated. It was impossible for the Xiao family to reveal the source of the money, and it would be better if others thought that they had borrowed the money. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 480, Discrimination. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. At this moment, only Madame O was guarding Oli L's bed. She was holding a grudge against Xiaoxing for hurting her son, so when she saw this scene, she also went to the end of Xiaoli L's bed and said sarcastically, "Isn't that so? They're a group of rural bumpkins. They don't have money, but they still insisted on coming to a big hospital in S City. The people in S City don't even have enough medical resources themselves. If not for the fact that we're worried about my grandson's eyes, we would have gone back long ago. Living with a group of out-of-town people makes us smell like dirt. It wasn't easy for us to wait until the others left, but we still have to stay with this family." Madame O's words were filled with disdain. S City was the only city in the country that had always been as famous as the capital, so the people of S City always felt a sense of superiority towards people from other provinces. Usually, when they saw people from other provinces, they were very condescending. When Xiaolin heard the other party's words, he suddenly understood why they pretended not to hear him when he greeted them previously, and why when he went to play with Oli when the O family wasn't around, Oli would roll his eyes at him. Xiaolin lowered his eyes and gritted his teeth as he grabbed the corner of his shirt tightly. Yu Bing stopped Xiaoxing when he wanted to speak. In non-working settings, it wasn't suitable for a man to quarrel with a woman. If he lost, he would suffer humiliation as well. It was a catch-22 situation. After Yu Bing stood up and walked to them, she sized up Jiang Heng and Ningbai from head to toe. This action wasn't polite, but it was Yu Bing's response to the two of them being rude just now. The couple in front of her had probably never been sized up like this before, so their expressions were a little ugly. Yu Bing felt a little better and asked, "You two are cadres, right?" Yu Bing looked at Madame O again. "And you're a retired worker?" Madame O immediately straightened her back and revealed her identity proudly. "I'm an old employee of S City's cotton mill. I've been deemed a model worker as well." Yu Bing smiled and clapped as she said, "Speaking of which, city dwellers should be more enlightened than us bumpkins, but now, all of you keep calling us bumpkins. Why? Don't you eat the vegetables planted by bumpkins? Are you planning to promote the theory of discrimination between rural and urban areas this time? Or is it the theory of inequality? I thought that rural people like us still had some status in this country, but it seems that I'm too ignorant. It's not easy for me to come to S City, so I have to find the relevant departments to report your theories and determine which is the right one." The country had already been advocating equality for 20 to 30 years. At various conferences, they kept emphasizing the importance of the peasant class, but their arguments were the complete opposite. If the relevant departments found out, they would definitely arrest them. When Madame O heard this, she quickly defended herself. "I didn't say anything just now." Then, she scurried back to her bed. Ningbai opened her mouth a few times before closing it again. She didn't know what to say for a moment. In the end, she said, "Let's not talk about anything else. You need money, right? I'll give you another 2,000 yuan. After Yu Bing picked up the 10,000 yuan tied to the bed with a rubber band, she threw it at Ningbai. "I won't even consider adding 20,000 yuan. Materialistic people only have the pleasure of squandering money left." This time, Yu Bing spoke with disdain and arrogance. The confrontation just now let the couple realize that this family was a tough nut to crack, so they no longer asked for trouble and left with the money. After Dr. Min finished checking the ward, he returned to the office and saw two patients' families standing inside. When Jiang Heng and Ningbai saw their daughters attending doctor, they stood up and greeted him. Dr. Min thought that something had happened to the patient and asked with concern, "Please sit down. Did something happen to Jiang Wan's eyes?" Ningbai pretended not to know anything and replied with a smile, "Jiang Wan's eyes are fine. We heard that the little girl in front of us hasn't undergone surgery yet, right?" Dr. Min nodded. "Yes, the donor can last until the spring festival and hopes to spend another year with his family, so after our discussion, the surgery was scheduled for tomorrow." After Ningbai and her husband exchanged looks, Ningbai said slowly, "Time is quite tight, so I hope you can give this spot to my daughter." Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.